I used to believe that life rewarded people who worked hard and loved honestly. Every morning, I unlocked the doors of an old wedding venue before the sun came up. The building looked worn from the outside, but every day I brought it a little closer to the dream my grandfather had left behind. Most people thought I was only the venue manager. They saw me arranging chairs, checking flower deliveries, fixing broken lights, and welcoming couples with a smile. Nobody knew the truth. The venue belonged to me. When my grandfather passed away, he left me everything, but he also left me one important lesson. Ethan, he used to say, never let money introduce you. Let your character do that first. So I kept my ownership a secret. I worked beside every employee instead of standing above them. I wanted people to respect my work, not my bank account. And honestly, I was happy because every evening, after a long day at work, I knew Sophia would be waiting for me. For 5 years, she'd been my biggest dream. We talked about our future almost every night. One evening, while we were walking through the garden outside the venue, she smiled and asked, "Do you ever think about our wedding?" I laughed. Every single day. She nudged my shoulder. "Really? Of course. I already know where I want to marry you." She looked surprised. "You do?" I smiled as I looked back at the venue. "Right here." She laughed. "This place? It's beautiful. But don't you think we could do something more luxurious someday?" I shrugged. "Luxury isn't what makes a wedding unforgettable." She tilted her head. "Then what does?" I looked into her eyes. "The person waiting for you at the end of the aisle." She smiled, but something about that smile felt different. Smaller, less certain. I ignored it. I told myself I was imagining things. Over the next few weeks, our conversations slowly changed. Instead of a skin, the change didn't happen overnight. At first, it was small. Sophia started canceling our dinner plans. She answered my messages hours later. Sometimes she would smile at her phone, then quickly lock the screen when I looked at her. I kept telling myself I was overthinking. She's probably busy, I whispered every time doubt entered my mind. But deep inside, I already knew something was wrong. One Friday evening, I called her. "Hey," I said, "are we still meeting for dinner?" There was a long silence. Finally, she answered, "Can we skip tonight?" I frowned. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, I'm just tired." I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. "That's okay. I'll bring your favorite coffee tomorrow." "You don't have to." "I want to." Another silence. Then she quietly said, "Ethan, we need to talk." Those 4 words made my heart sink. People never say we need to talk before something good. The next evening, we met at the small park where we had shared our first date 5 years earlier. She was already sitting on a bench when I arrived. She didn't stand. She didn't smile. She didn't even look happy to see me. "You sat beside her." "You've been distant lately," I said softly. "I know. Did I do something wrong?" She shook her head. "No." "Then tell me what's happening." She stared at the ground for several seconds before speaking. "I met someone." It felt as though the world stopped moving. "What do you mean?" She finally looked into my eyes. "His name is Adrian Kingsley." I had heard that name before. Everyone had. The son of one of the richest families in the city. A man whose face appeared in magazines and business news almost every week. I forced myself to stay calm. "Are you saying you're friends?" She slowly shook her head. "No." My voice became almost a whisper. "Then what are you saying?" She took a deep breath. "I'm saying, I don't think we should be together anymore." I stared at her, unable to be. I stared at Sophia, hoping she would smile and tell me this was all some terrible joke. She didn't. Instead, she took a slow breath and said, "Ethan, please understand." I shook my head. "No." She looked down at the ground. "I've been thinking about this for weeks. And you never thought to tell me?" I didn't know how. I laughed bitterly. "So you decided it would be easier to replace me?" She closed her eyes. "Please don't make this harder." I stepped closer. "Harder?" "Sophia, we spent 5 years together. We planned our future. We talked about getting married. I saved every extra dollar because I wanted to build a life with you." Tears filled my eyes. "I even bought a ring." Her head snapped up. "A ring." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box. "I was going to ask you next weekend." My hands trembled as I opened it. The diamond caught the evening light. For a moment, Sophia couldn't speak. "Oh, Ethan, you never gave me the chance." She covered her mouth. I'm sorry. I looked into her eyes. Then don't leave. Silence. I'll work harder. Another silence. I'll take a second job if I have to. She slowly shook her head. This isn't about working harder. Then what is it about? She finally met my eyes. I want security. I can give you that. No. She whispered. I want the kind of life Adrian can give me. I felt my heart breaking one piece at a time. So that's it. She nodded weakly. I don't want to struggle anymore. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did those 5 years mean nothing? They meant everything. Then why? Because love doesn't pay bills. Her words hit me harder than anything else she had said. I took one slow breath. You think money guarantees happiness? I think it makes life easier. I closed the ring box. I would have spent the rest of my life trying to make you happy. I know. I would have stood beside you through every problem. I don't remember how long I stood there after Sophia disappeared. The park had grown quiet. The sun had almost disappeared behind the buildings. People walked past me, laughing, talking, living their lives, but everything around me felt strangely distant. I looked down at the engagement ring still resting in my hand. Just a few minutes earlier, it had represented my future. Now it felt like a memory that had never been given the chance to exist. I slowly closed the velvet box and slipped it back into my pocket. Then I whispered to myself, so this is how 5 years end. My voice barely sounded like my own. I drove back to the venue in complete silence. The radio stayed off. The phone never left my pocket. For the first time in years, I didn't know where I belonged. When I unlocked the front door, the familiar smell of fresh flowers and polished wood welcomed me home. The ballroom lights were still on. Tomorrow's wedding was already prepared. White roses covered the stage. Crystal chandeliers reflected across the polished floor. Everything looked beautiful. I stood in the center of the empty hall and quietly asked, why does everyone else get their happy ending? No one answered. A few moments later, I heard footsteps behind me. Ethan, it was Noah. He immediately noticed my face. You met her, didn't you? I nodded. He didn't ask another question. Instead, he walked over and handed me a bottle of water. I laughed softly. You always know what I need. No. He smiled sadly. I just know when my best friend is trying not to fall apart. I sat down on the front row of chairs. It's over. I know. She chose him. I know. She said she wanted the life he could give her. Noah remained silent for a moment before speaking. Then she never really understood who you are. I looked at him. Maybe I wasn't enough. He shook his head immediately. Don't ever say that again. But it's true. No, Ethan. He sat beside. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. For a few seconds, I forgot everything that had happened. Then the memories came rushing back. Sophia, the ring, her goodbye, Adrian. I closed my eyes and took one deep breath. No more, I whispered to myself. I've cried enough. When I arrived at the venue, the sun was just beginning to rise. Golden light poured through the tall windows, filling the empty ballroom with warmth. For the first time in weeks, I didn't see a place that reminded me of loss. I saw possibility. Rebecca was arranging flowers near the entrance when she noticed me. Good morning, Ethan. Morning. She studied my face for a moment. You look different. I smiled faintly. Doi. She nodded. You still look hurt. She paused. But you also look stronger. I made a decision. What kind of decision? I looked around the ballroom. I'm done living in yesterday. She smiled. I think your grandfather will be proud of that. A few minutes later, Noah walked in carrying a stack of renovation plans. I've got good news. I could use some. He spread the drawings across a table. We can finally start restoring the East Wing. I looked over the plans. Fresh gardens, a larger ballroom, modern lighting, a beautiful outdoor ceremony space. Everything my grandfather had dreamed about. I looked at Noah and smiled. Let's build it. For the next several months, I poured every ounce of my energy into the venue. I worked before sunrise. I stayed long after everyone else had gone home. I painted walls, carried furniture, met suppliers, solved problems, celebrated every small victory with my team. Slowly, the old venue began to shine again. Couples started recommending us to their friends. Wedding planners praised our service. Photographers called it one of the most beautiful venues in the city. Every success reminded me of something important. Pain can either break you or build you. One evening, the weeks after Sophia left me became the hardest weeks of my life. Every morning, I woke up hoping the pain would be smaller. Every morning, I was disappointed. I reached for my phone without thinking, expecting to see her name on the screen. There was never a message. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, "You have two choices, Ethan. You can stay here feeling sorry for yourself, or you can get up and build the life you promised your grandfather." I threw the blanket aside and forced myself out of bed. When I arrived at the venue before sunrise, the building was completely quiet. I unlocked the front door and slowly walked through the empty ballroom. The chairs were perfectly arranged. The chandeliers sparkled in the early morning light. Fresh flowers waited to be placed before another couple's wedding. I smiled sadly. No matter what's happening in my life, this place still gives people hope. That thought kept me moving. Instead of crying, I worked. I carried heavy tables across the ballroom. I climbed ladders to repair old lighting fixtures. I repainted walls that needed fresh color. I planted flowers in the front garden with my own hands. Every drop of sweat felt better than another hour of heartbreak. Around noon, Noah walked into the ballroom carrying 2 cups of coffee. I had a feeling you'd forget lunch again. I laughed quietly. "You know me too well." He handed me one of the cups. "I also know you're trying to outrun your pain." "I don't know what you're talking about." He raised an eyebrow. "Ethan, you've been working 14-hour days." "I'm just staying busy." "No." He shook his head. "You're hiding." His words hit me harder than I expected. I looked away. If I stop working, my voice cracked, I'll start thinking. Noah sat beside me on the edge of the stage. And what? The next few days passed in the same quiet rhythm. I arrived before everyone else. I left after everyone else. The venue became my home, my distraction, and the only place where my heart felt even slightly at peace. One afternoon, while I was adjusting flowers in the garden, I heard footsteps behind me. "Ethan." I turned around. Rebecca was standing there with a clipboard in one hand and a concerned expression on her face. "You skipped lunch again," she said. I forced a smile. I wasn't hungry. She crossed her arms. "That's the 3rd time this week." "I'm just busy." "No." She shook her head gently. "You're hurting." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then I looked away. "Does it really show that much?" She smiled sadly. "Only to people who actually care." Her words caught me off guard. I laughed quietly. "I've been trying so hard to hide it." "I know. So why doesn't it work?" "Because pain doesn't disappear when you hide it." We stood in silence for a few seconds. Finally, she spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "When was the last time you did something for yourself?" I thought about it. I couldn't remember. "I guess it's been a while." Rebecca nodded. "That's what I thought." She pointed toward the ballroom. "You spend every day making sure strangers have the perfect wedding." "Edo." "But who's making sure you're okay?" I smiled weakly. "No one." She stepped closer. "Then let your friends do that." I looked at her, surprised. "My friends?" "Yes." She laughed softly. "You don't have to carry everything by yourself." Before I could answer, Noah walked through the garden carrying a toolbox. "I knew I'd find you two here." Rebecca smiled. "We're having a serious conversation." Noah looked at me. "About you pretending you're fine?" I sighed. "Am I that obvious?" He laughed. "Only to the people who know you." I shook my head. "I don't want to become the guy everyone feels sorry." A few days after my conversation with Noah and Rebecca, Margaret asked me to meet her in my grandfather's old office. She had worked beside my grandfather for more than 30 years. She knew every corner of the venue and every lesson he had ever tried to teach me. When I walked into the office, she was standing beside the large wooden desk with a small box in her hands. She smiled gently. "Close the door, Ethan." I did as she asked. "Is everything okay?" She nodded. "More than okay." She placed the box on the desk. "I've been waiting for the right time to give you this." I looked at the old wooden box. "What is it?" "It belonged to your grandfather." My heart tightened. I thought I'd already received everything he left me. Margaret smiled. "He didn't leave this to the owner." She looked directly into my eyes. "He left it to the man he believed you would become." I slowly opened the box. Inside were old photographs, handwritten notes, and a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first line immediately caught my attention. "My dear Ethan, If you're reading this, it means life has already tested your heart. I swallowed hard and continued reading. One day you'll discover that people treat you differently when they believe you have money. Some will respect you. Others will only respect your wealth. Never confuse the two. I stopped reading for a moment. It sounded exactly like him. Margaret sat across from me. He spent years deciding who should inherit this place. I always wondered why he chose me. She smiled. Would you like to know? I nodded. More than anything. She folded her hands. I asked him the same question years ago. What did he say? She looked toward my grandfather's portrait hanging on the wall. He said, if Ethan ever has to choose between making another dollar and protecting the people who work beside him, he'll choose the people every single time. I carefully folded my grandfather's letter and placed it back inside the wooden box. For a long moment, I couldn't say a word. Margaret waited patiently until I finally looked at her. I understand now, I said quietly. She smiled. What do you understand? My grandfather didn't leave me this venue because he thought I could make the most money. She nodded. Go on. He trusted me because he believed I would take care of the people inside these walls. A proud smile appeared on her face. Exactly. I looked around the office. There's something else I want to do. What is it? I don't want anyone to know I'm the owner. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Not even the employees? I shook my head. No. Why? I thought about my grandfather's letter. Because I want everyone here to feel like we're working together. She remained silent. I don't want people calling me the boss. I want them calling me Ethan. Margaret laughed softly. Your grandfather would have loved hearing that. Just then, Noah knocked on the office door. Am I interrupting? Come in, he replied. He stepped inside and looked between us. Everything okay? Margaret smiled. I think Ethan just made an important decision. Noah looked at me. What decision? I took a deep breath. My ownership stays a secret. He blinked. Really? I nodded. I want respect to come from my actions, not my title. A slow smile spread across Noah's face. That sounded exactly like you. The weeks that followed were filled with work. Every morning began before sunrise. Every evening ended long after the last employee went home. The venue slowly transformed. Fresh flowers filled the gardens. New lighting brightened the ballroom. Every small improvement reminded me that broken things could become beautiful again. One night, after finishing a long shift, I sat alone in my office and unlocked my phone. The first thing I saw was Sophia's latest social media post. The months that followed changed everything. Not because I became famous. Not because people suddenly discover my wealth. But because I finally stopped measuring my life by what I had lost. I started measuring it by what I was building. Every morning, I walked through the venue and greeted everyone by name. Good morning, Sarah. Morning, Ethan. How's your son doing? She smiled. He's doing much better. Thank you for asking. Small conversations like that mattered to me. Because my grandfather was right. A successful business wasn't built only with money. It was built with people. One afternoon, Noah walked into my office holding a newspaper. I looked up. What happened? He placed it on my desk. Read the article. I picked it up. The headline made me pause. The city's most desired wedding venue continues its rise. I looked at Noah. This is about us. He smiled. Who else? I laughed. I never expected this. Why not? Because I was just trying to survive. Noah shook his head. That's exactly why you succeeded. I looked through the article. It talked about our attention to detail, our amazing staff, our unforgettable wedding experiences. But not once did it mention my name. And I was completely okay with that. Later that evening, Rebecca joined me in the ballroom. She looked around proudly. Do you remember how this place looked when you started? I smiled. I remember. Old walls, broken lights, empty rooms. And now, I looked around. Now people come here to celebrate the happiest days of their lives. Rebecca nodded. You did that. No. I shook my head. We did. She smiled. That's why people respect you. That night, I sat in my office and looked at my grandfather's photograph. We made it. I whispered. I hope you're proud. For the first time in a long time, I felt peaceful. I wasn't thinking about Sophia. I wasn't wondering about Adrian. I wasn't asking why I wasn't enough. Nearly a year had passed since the night Sophia walked away from me. A year of rebuilding. A year of learning how to live without the person I once thought I couldn't survive without. The pain didn't disappear completely, but no longer controlled me. The venue had become everything my grandfather hoped it would become. Every weekend, couples walked through those doors believing they were entering the beginning of their forever. And every time I saw their happiness, I remembered why I had chosen to keep going. One Monday morning, I was reviewing the latest event schedule when Daniel Foster arrived. Daniel was one of the most respected wedding planners in the city. Whenever he visited, it usually meant something important. He entered my office with a large smile. "Ethan, do you have a minute?" I looked up. "Of course. What's going on?" He placed a folder on my desk. "I have news." "Good news." He laughed. "The best kind." I opened the folder but stopped when I saw his expression. "What is it?" Daniel leaned against the desk. "We received a request for the biggest wedding event this year." I smiled. "That's great. It gets better." "How?" "The client specifically requested this venue." I nodded. "Who are they?" Daniel took a breath. "Adrian Kingsley and Sophia Bennett." The moment those names left his mouth, everything inside me went quiet. For a few seconds, I wasn't sitting in my office anymore. I was back in that park. I was holding the engagement ring. I was watching Sophia walk away. "Ethan," Daniel's voice pulled me back. I looked at him. I just wasn't expecting that. He studied my face. "Is there something wrong?" I quickly closed the folder. "No, you know them." I hesitated. Then I answered honestly. "I used to." Daniel didn't ask more. He was professional enough to understand that some stories weren't his to question. "The wedding will be very high profile," he said. "Many important guests." Noah stared at the folder in his hands. "Ethan, this can't be serious." I looked at him calmly. "It is." He placed the folder back on my desk. "You're really going to accept this wedding?" I nodded. "Yes." He shook his head. "After everything she did?" I stayed quiet. "After she left you for Adrian?" I looked through the office window toward the ballroom. "Yes." Noah walked closer. "I don't understand." "What don't you understand?" "You have every reason to say no." I smiled slightly. "Maybe I did a year ago. And now? Now I don't want my decisions to be controlled by my past." Noah sighed. "Ethan, I'm not saying you should get revenge." "I know. I'm saying you don't have to put yourself through this." I picked up the folder. "This isn't about Sophia." "Then what is it about?" I looked at the wedding schedule on my desk. "It's about my work." Noah stared at me. "That's your answer?" "Yes." He shook his head. "You've changed." I smiled. "I hope so." A few minutes later, Rebecca entered the office. She immediately noticed the serious atmosphere. "What's happening?" Noah pointed toward the folder. "Tell her." Rebecca looked at me. I handed her the documents. She read the names. Her expression changed. "Ethan." "I know." She slowly placed the folder down. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I am." She sat across from me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you still have feelings for her?" The question was painful because it was honest. I looked down for a moment. Once, I loved her more than anything. And now, I took a breath. Now I respect the person I became after losing her. Rebecca smiled softly. "That's a powerful answer." I opened the contract. "Send Daniel the approval." Noah looked shocked. "You're approving it right now?" "Yes." Without hesitation, I looked at him. There was hesitation. Then why? Because hesitation belongs to emotions. I signed the document. Decisio. The day of the final venue inspection arrived faster than I expected. I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I was nervous about the wedding, because I knew I would see Sophia again. For a moment, I sat on the edge of my bed and remembered the last time we stood face to face. Her voice, her goodbye, the way she walked away without looking back. I closed my eyes. "That was another life," I whispered. Then I stood up. I'd spent almost a year rebuilding myself. I refused to let one moment from the past take that away. When I arrived at the venue, Rebecca was already waiting near the entrance. "They're almost here." I nodded. "Everything ready?" "Perfect. Good." She looked at me. "You don't have to stay hidden." "I know." "Then why are you?" I smiled. "Because today isn't about me." She understood. "It's about the clients." "Exactly." A few minutes later, luxury cars arrived outside the venue. Through the window, I saw Adrian step out first. He looked exactly like the person everyone described. Confident, successful, untouchable. Then Sophia stepped out beside him. For a second, my heart remembered the past. But only for a second. I turned away from the window. Noah walked beside me. You okay? I nodded. Yes. Really? I smiled. Really? Sophia and Adrian entered the main lobby with Daniel. I watched from distance. Daniel greeted them warmly. Welcome. We're honored to host your wedding. Adrian looked around with satisfaction. This place is even better than I expected. Sophia smiled. It's beautiful. I heard her voice from across the hall. The same voice I once woke up wanting to hear every morning. But now, it felt like a memory. Adrian looked at Daniel. We want everything to be perfect. It will be. My guests include important people. We understand. Adrian smiled. Good. From my office, I watched the team handle everything professionally. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody treat. The wedding preparations continued every day. The venue was busier than it had ever been. Employees moved from room to room. Decorators adjusted every small detail, and planners checked every part of the schedule. I stayed focused on my work. That was the only way I knew how to handle seeing Sophia again. I reminded myself every morning. She's a client now. Nothing more. But sometimes life had a strange way of testing that promise. One afternoon, I was walking through the main hall when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Ethan, I stopped. For a moment, my heart reacted before my mind could. I turned around. Sophia was standing there. She looked surprised, but not because she recognized me. Because she didn't. Oh, sorry, she said politely. I thought you were someone else. I gave a professional smile. No problem. She looked at the clipboard in my hand. Are you part of the management team? Yes. She nodded. Good. I need to discuss a few changes with whoever is handling the arrangements. I can help you. She looked slightly uncertain. Are you sure? Of course. She handed me the documents. I want the flower arrangements changed. Adrian wants everything to look more luxurious. I looked at the notes. We can make those adjustments. Good. She smiled briefly. Thank you. Then she walked away. That was it. The woman who once knew everything about me now saw me as nothing more than another employee. Strangely, it didn't hurt the way I expected. A year ago, that moment would have destroyed me. Now it only reminded me how far I had come. Later that day, Adrian arrived for another inspection. He entered the venue wearing an expensive suit and surrounded by people from his planning team. He looked around proudly. I want everyone to understand something. The staff stopped and listened. This wedding is not going to be ordinary. Adrian smiled. My family has a reputation to maintain. One employee. The wedding day finally arrived. For months, this moment had been approaching. Every plan, every meeting, every small detail, everything had led to this day. I arrived at the venue before sunrise. The building was quiet. The same place that had once been old and forgotten now stood as one of the most beautiful wedding locations in the city. I walked through the entrance slowly, looking at everything my team had created. The flowers were perfect. The lights were shining. The ballroom looked exactly how we planned. I touched the wooden railing near the entrance and remembered my grandfather's words. Ethan, never forget that every couple who walks through these doors is trusting you with one of the most important days of their lives. I smiled softly. I remember, Grandpa. A few minutes later, Noah found me near the ceremony hall. You've been here since what time? I looked at my watch. 5. He sighed. Of course. I laughed. Everything needs to be perfect. It already is. I shook my head. Perfect can always become better. Noah smiled. That attitude is why this place became what it is. I looked around. This isn't about me, isn't it? No. I pointed toward the employees preparing everything. It's about all of us. Soon, the staff started arriving. I checked every department personally. Sarah, are the flowers ready for the ceremony? Yes, Ethan. Everything is placed. Good. Michael, how is the lighting? All tested twice. Excellent. Daniel, are the guest arrangements complete? Yes. We're ready. Everyone listened carefully. Not because they knew I was the owner. They didn't. They listened because I had spent months standing beside them, helping them, working with them, respecting them. That was enough. Around noon, the first guests started arriving. Luxury cars filled the entrance. Expensive suits, designer dresses, important names from the city. Reporters gathered outside, hoping to. After Sophia walked away, I returned to my responsibilities. I didn't allow myself to think too much about her reaction. Today wasn't about the past. Today was about doing my job. The ceremony area needed one final inspection before guests entered. I checked every chair, every flower arrangement, every small detail that could affect someone's special moment. Noah followed behind me. You know, she noticed. I looked at him. Who? Sophia. I smiled slightly. She noticed I was working? No. He shook his head. She noticed people respect you. I continued walking. Respect is earned. Exactly. He looked at me carefully. And that's what she never understood. I stopped for a moment. Noah. What? Don't make this about her. He became quiet. I continued. I don't want today to become a reminder of what I lost. Then what is it? I looked toward the ceremony stage. A reminder of what I built. Noah smiled. That's my friend. A few minutes later, Charles Kingsley arrived. Everyone knew his name. Adrian's father. A powerful businessman who had built an empire over decades. People immediately welcomed him. I watched from a distance as he entered the venue. He looked around carefully, not like a guest, like someone judging every detail. Charles approached Daniel. This place is impressive. Daniel smiled. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. I've attended hundreds of events. Charles looked around the hall. Most places focus only on appearance. He touched the table arrangement. But this place feels different. Daniel nodded. We focus on the experience. Charles smiled. Whoever manages this venue understands business. I quietly stood nearby. He had no idea he was talking about me. Daniel noticed me and smiled. Ethan is one of the reasons everything runs smoothly. Charles looked at me. Are you part of the management team? I nodded. Yes. Charles extended his hand. Then you have my respect. I looked at the document in Rebecca's hands. For a moment, the noise of the wedding disappeared. The guests, the music, the conversations, everything around me became distant because I knew exactly what that signature meant. My secret was about to end. How did this happen? I asked quietly. Rebecca opened the folder. The payment agreement has a final authorization clause, and the venue owner must personally approve the final transfer. I stared at the paper. For almost a year, I had kept my identity hidden. Not because I was ashamed, not because I was afraid, because I wanted people to know me before they knew my position. I wanted employees to respect my work, not my money. Noah walked over and noticed our expressions. What happened? Rebecca handed him the document. He read quickly. Then he looked at me. Ethan. I nodded. I know. This means... Yes. He lowered his voice. They might find out. I looked toward the ballroom. Across the room, I saw Sophia laughing with Adrian and their guests. She had no idea. None of them did. I thought about the day she left me. The day she told me my life was too ordinary. The day she chose a richer future. And now, her dream wedding depended on the man she believed wasn't enough. Noah stepped closer. You don't have to do this. I looked at him. What do you mean? You can refuse. I shook my head. No, Ethan. Noah, this isn't about proving something. Then what is it about? I looked at the document again. It's about being responsible. Rebecca nodded. That's exactly why your grandfather trusted you. I took the pen from the table. But before signing, I stopped. For 1 second, I wondered what Sophia would think if she knew. Would she regret leaving? Would she apologize? Would she finally understand? Then I pushed those thoughts away. Those questions belonged to the past. I wasn't doing this for. I stood near the back of the ballroom, watching everything continue. The guests were smiling. The music was playing. The wedding decorations looked perfect. To everyone else, it was the happiest day of their lives. But for me, it was the moment a hidden truth was finally coming into the light. Rebecca returned a few minutes later. Her expression was calm, but I could see the seriousness in her eyes. It's done. I nodded. Good. She looked at me. They have the documents now. Who? The Kingsley family. I stayed silent. No panique. No anger. Just acceptance. Noah looked at me. Are you really okay? I smiled. Yes. Ow. I looked around the venue. Because I have nothing to hide. Noah nodded slowly. That's true. A few minutes later, Daniel approached me. Ethan. I turned around. Yes. There is something unusual happening. I raised an eyebrow. What happened? Mr. Kingsley's team is asking about the owner. I remained calm. What did you tell them? The truth. My heart stayed steady. What truth? Daniel looked confused. That the owners signed the final approval. I nodded. Good. He looked at me carefully. Is there something you're not telling me? I smiled slightly. Not anymore. Before he could ask another question, we heard footsteps approaching. Charles Kingsley was walking toward us. His expression was different. Not angry. Not confused. Just surprised. He stopped in front of me. Ethan. I looked at him. Yes, Mr. Kingsley. He held the signed document in his hand. I need to ask you something. Of course. Your full name. The room around us suddenly felt quieter. I knew this moment had arrived. I looked directly at him. Ethan Carter. Charles stared at me. Then he looked down at the document again. You are the owner? I nodded. Yes. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he smiled. I see. I waited. Finally, he extended his hand. I owe you an apology. Sophia stood in front of me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the wedding continued around us, but it felt like we were standing in our own world. Finally, she whispered, Ethan. I looked at her calmly. Yes. Her eyes moved around the ballroom, then back to me. You're the owner? I nodded. Yes. She looked completely shocked. I don't understand. I waited. What don't you understand? She lowered her voice. All this time, she looked around. This place belonged to you. I nodded again. Yes. Her expression changed. I thought you were just managing the venue. I was doing both. Why didn't you tell me? That question surprised me. I looked at her. Would it have changed your decision? She opened her mouth, but no words came out, because we both knew the answer. A year ago, I would have wanted to hear her say yes. I would have wanted to believe that money was the only thing that separated us. But now, I understood. The problem was never the venue. It was never my success. It was never my future. The problem was that we wanted different things. Sophia looked down. I had no idea. I know. I thought. She stopped. What did you think? She looked at me with sadness. I thought you were still trying to build something small. I smiled slightly. I was. She looked confused. What? I was building something. I looked around the ballroom, but not just a business. I pointed toward the employees working together. I was building a family. Sophia became quiet. Then Adrian approached. Ethan. I turned toward him. His expression was completely different from before. The confidence was gone. You own this place? I nodded. Yes. He looked around. So all of this? Yes. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he forced a smile. Congratulations. Thank you. Adrian looked uncomfortable. I guess we underestimated you. I shook my head. No. He looked at me. The wedding celebration continued, but something had changed. The truth was no longer hidden. After months of keeping my identity private, the moment I had avoided had finally arrived. I was invited into the private meeting room at the venue. Inside were lawyers, accountants, and representatives from both families. The atmosphere was serious. I walked in quietly. Everyone looked at me. Some recognized me as the person who managed the venue, but they still didn't know the full truth. Daniel stood near the table. Ethan, we're ready. I nodded. Thank you. One of the lawyers opened a folder. We need the final ownership confirmation before the remaining payment can be processed. I looked at the documents. I understand. The lawyer glanced at me. Are you representing the owner? I stayed silent for a moment. Then I answered. No. Everyone looked at me. The lawyer frowned slightly. Then may I ask your role here? I calmly pulled out the chair. My role is the person who needs to sign these documents. The room became quiet. Charles Kingsley looked confused. Excuse me. I picked up the pen. I am the owner. For several seconds, nobody reacted. It was as if my words needed time to reach everyone. Adrian laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because he thought he misunderstood. Wait. He looked at me. You? I nodded. Yes. He glanced around the room. The owner of this entire property? Yes. Sophia's face slowly changed. I watched the realization appear in her eyes. The same woman who once thought I was struggling to build a small life was now discovering that the place where she planned her dream wedding belonged to me. One of the accountants quickly checked the documents. Mr. Carter is listed as the primary owner. The lawyer looked surprised. I was not informed. I smiled slightly. That was intentional. Why? Because I wanted people to see the work before they saw the name. No badishko podstavowej. The room remained silent after I signed the final document. Everyone was looking at me differently. A few minutes earlier, I was just the person managing the venue. Now, they knew the truth. I was the person who owned everything they were standing inside. Sophia slowly stepped forward. Ethan, I looked at her. Yes. Her voice was quiet. I didn't know. I nodded. I know. She looked at the documents on the table. You really own this place all this time? Yes. She shook her head slightly. Why didn't you tell me? The question was simple, but the answer carried years of pain. I looked at her. Sophia. She waited. You never asked. Her expression changed. What? I stayed calm. You never asked about my dreams. You never asked what I was building. You never asked why I spent so much time at the venue. She looked away. I thought. I interrupted gently. What did you think? She became quiet. I continued. You saw the clothes I wore. You saw the car I drove. You saw the life I lived. But you never looked deeper. Her eyes became wet. Ethan, that's not fair. I nodded slowly. Maybe it isn't. Maybe we both made mistakes. But the truth is, I paused. You decided my value before knowing my story. Nobody spoke. Even Adrian looked uncomfortable. He had always believed money was the thing that separated us. Now he was standing in front of proof that I had something more valuable. Character. Adrian finally spoke. I have to admit. He looked around the room. This place is impressive. I looked at him. Thank you. He forced a smile. I didn't expect this. I know. His expression became serious. Why hide it? I answered honestly. Because I wanted people to respect the person I was, not the money behind my name. Charles nodded. That is a rare mindset. I thanked him, but my eyes returned to Sophia. She looked like she was searching for the person she remembered. After my conversation with Sophia, nobody spoke for several moments. The room was filled with a strange silence. Not the silence of anger. The silence of people realizing they had misunderstood someone. Charles Kingsley slowly walked toward me. Ethan. I turned. Yes. He looked at the documents again. I spent my entire life studying successful people. I listened quietly. I thought success was measured by numbers. He looked around the room. Companies. Properties. Assets. Then he looked back at me. But today I saw something different. I raised an eyebrow. What? He smiled. Someone who had everything but never needed to announce it. I didn't know how to respond. Charles continued. When I first met you, I assumed you were just another employee. I nodded. That was understandable. No. He shook his head. It was my mistake. He extended his hand. I respect you, Ethan Carter. I shook his hand. Thank you. Adrian watched the exchange silently. For the first time since I knew him, he didn't look confident. He looked uncertain. Finally, he spoke. I don't understand something. I looked at him. What? You had this entire place. Yes. You had success. Yes. Then why did you live so simply? I smiled. Because I wanted a simple life. He looked confused. Most people would show everyone what they have. I nodded. That's exactly why I didn't. Adrian looked away. I could tell he was thinking about something. Maybe he was remembering the way he treated me. Maybe he was realizing that money wasn't the only thing that created value. Sophia quietly spoke. Ethan, I looked at her. Yes. Was I wrong about you? The question was difficult. Not because I didn't know the answer. Because I'd spent so long wanting her to ask it. I took a deep breath. You were wrong about one thing. She waited. You thought my life wasn't enough because it didn't look expensive. She lower. I walked back into the main ballroom. The music was still playing. The guests were still talking. The wedding decorations still looked perfect. Nothing had changed for them. But everything had changed for me. A year ago, I thought this moment would be my revenge. I imagined Sophia discovering the truth and feeling the same pain I felt. I imagined Adrian realizing he had lost to me. But standing there, I felt none of that. I only felt peace. Rebecca approached me quietly. Ethan. I turned. Yes. She smiled. I'm proud of you. I laughed softly. For what? For choosing yourself without hurting anyone else. I looked toward the ceremony stage. I almost didn't. Really? I nodded. There was a time when I wanted them to regret everything. Rebecca understood. But now I realize regret doesn't change the past. She smiled. That's a powerful lesson. I watched the guests take their seats. Everyone was preparing for the ceremony. The same ceremony that I could have stopped. The same event that could have become a moment of revenge. But I chose differently. Noah joined us. You really let them continue? I nodded. Yes. He smiled. I knew you would. You did. Of course. Why? He looked at me. Because the old Ethan wanted revenge. And the new Ethan, he wants peace. I smiled. Maybe you're right. A few moments later, Sophia walked past me. She stopped. For a second, I thought she wanted to say something. Finally, she whispered, Ethan. Yes. Thank you. I looked at her. For what? For not destroying today. I nodded. This day was never mine to destroy. She looked at me sadly. I don't know how you became this person. I smiled. Neither did I. But losing everything I thought I needed. I looked around the venue. Helped me find what I actually needed. Sophia stayed quiet. Then she said something I never expected. You really loved me, didn't you? I nodded. The wedding ceremony continued exactly as planned. The music filled the ballroom. The guests smiled. The cameras captured every beautiful moment. From the outside, it looked like a perfect celebration. And maybe it was. Because even after everything that happened, I wanted them to have the day they dreamed about. I stood near the back of the room, quietly watching. Not as someone who was forgotten. Not as someone who lost. But as someone who had finally accepted his own journey. Noah stood beside me. You really are okay. I looked at him. Yes. I honestly didn't expect that. I smiled. Neither did I. He laughed softly. A year ago, you were holding an engagement ring and thinking your life was over. I nodded. I remember. And now? I looked around the venue. Now I realized that wasn't the end. Noah smiled. It was the beginning. I looked toward the stage. The place where hundreds of couples had promised forever. The place my grandfather trusted me to protect. The place that helped me discover who I truly was. I remembered his words. The greatest success is not what you own. It is what you give people. For the first time, I fully understood. The venue was never just a property. It was a responsibility, a promise, a legacy. After the ceremony ended, the guests moved toward the reception hall. Sophia approached me one final time. Ethan. I turned. Yes. She looked nervous. I don't know if I deserve your kindness. I smiled slightly. This isn't about what you deserve. Then what is it about? It's about who I choose to be. She looked at me carefully. I really lost someone special. I nodded. Maybe. A small silence followed. Then she whispered, I hope you're happy. I smiled. I am. Those two words felt powerful. Because they were true. Not the fake happiness I showed people. Not the kind that needed approval. Real happiness. The kind that came from peace. Sophia walked away. This